So Fortnite Chapter 2 has been released and people are telling me that it's different to Chapter 1, but when I checked the minimum and recommended system requirements, they seem to be the same in that if you want to play this game barely, then you'll need an i3 and 4GB of RAM, and if you want to play it with a smooth experience, you'll need 8GB of RAM and something like an i5 processor or better and a GTX 660. So today, we're going to be building a PC that's going to do all that, way above the recommended specs. And also I've heard reports of this game not being as smooth in that it can stutter compared to the Chapter 1 experience. And I must say, before we even get into this build, I think I know how to fix up the stuttering. And that is just add some RGB ring fans to the build. But jokes aside, we will take a look at that stuttering issue later. Let's have a look at what parts we've got here on the table where I've used a few local deals combined with some deals that I've got for parts off the internet. For those parts I have bought off the internet, like my memory and also ring fans, I will leave some links in the description below for you guys. But let's get this party, or should I say, disco, started. So now we completed this build, everything was straightforward, there wasn't too many hurdles to go through, we just had to install these fans at the front, one at the back, hook it all up to the controller, and now we've got all the different modes to choose from. This is the random mode, it's just cycling through all the different things this little Cool Moon system can do. That's the name of the 4-pack of fans in the controller. It's actually really good value for money considering all the other stuff generally costs close to $100 for a ring fan solution. This one cost me around $30 for 4 fans, controller, and remote. Now we've also got an RGB fan on the actual CPU, the i7-2600, but one thing we've got to do right now is test out the temperatures of the graphics card and the CPU, as well as tune up the memory on the DDR3 end side, just to make sure everything is running smooth with this whole system before we boot up Chapter 2 Fortnite. Another thing to touch on too is the i7-2600. I do, when I build these gaming PCs, personally disable what's called Spectre and Meltdown updates, and I get more performance out of my CPU that way too. So finishing up with all the benchmarks and then jumping into Fortnite Chapter 2, I was immediately surprised because suddenly everybody in this game sucked just as much as I do. And this to me means that they've got matchmaking going on in this new chapter of Fortnite, which is really good because every time I used to jump in, I would just get absolutely owned in this game. Now I'm jumping in, I've got guys, I'm like, hey, this guy's as bad as me. When we're having these skirmishes, it was pretty cool. Like, I could actually enjoy this game more than I've enjoyed it in the past. And so this enabled me to win my first victory royale in Fortnite. But we did benchmark this game for over 14 minutes because I have heard stories of the stuttering. And when I benchmarked it, it was a really smooth experience. But there was a couple of settings that I changed immediately because as soon as I jumped into the game, I did notice that stuttering. And this was at 1080p high settings initially. And immediately upon looking at these settings, I uncapped the FPS, which is something I recommend doing if you want the lowest input latency, though you may wish to put the FPS on a cap if you've got a G-Sync or FreeSync monitor and you're using those technologies. Though a little bit below that, I immediately took off shadows as well as post-processing. These two tend to have a significant effect on your CPU, and since stuttering generally comes from in games, from your CPU and memory side, it's important to drop settings that take the stress off the CPU and the memory. So dropping the shadows down and dropping the post-processing down immediately saw us getting a really smooth experience where the FPS went up to an average of over 150, and then the 0.1% lows and 1% lows were 30 and 60 respectively, which is actually a really good experience, especially for the budget that we've got here on the table. Now, of course, what if you want to play this game on epic settings, everything? You want those shadows up, you want that post-processing, you want that all maxed. Well, then you're gonna have to get a better CPU, something like a Ryzen 5 3600 or an i7 9600K. Those two CPUs should do the job, especially if you wanna max everything out and still get smooth FPS with no stuttering. Now, it seems like it's pretty much the same thing versus Chapter 1. I didn't notice a whole difference between the two. Keep in mind, I don't play this game that much. But one thing to look out for with today's PC that I built here, I did use a lot of used parts, and some of those were one-time deals. Like the RX 470, for example. I picked that up in South Korea on a used PC parts hunt. The SSD and 1TB were the same thing, and then the H61 motherboard, I actually got that off AliExpress, as well as the case. I got that from a local retailer. And the good thing is the ring fans as well as the DDR3 memory, I got those both off AliExpress too. So I'll put some of the links in the description below of some of the stuff that I've bought off the net. But some of the other stuff here I did get on local deals, which does make it a little bit difficult to replicate the same price. Though if you do look out in your local area for say an RX 470, you should be able to pick it up for a similar price of what I've paid here today. Anyway, with that aside, we did run the Heaven benchmark, the Firestrike benchmark, as well as the TimeSpy benchmark, and all those results were pretty good too. Though keep in mind, as I said before, I do disable that Spectre and Meltdown update. For me personally, especially out of this older hardware, it gives you the smoothest experience possible. And the good thing is with this little case right here, it's only juicing about 250 watts from the wall, so it's not that power hungry. And this little case with its 4 ring fans is keeping the temperatures under 70 degrees for the CPU and also around 75 max for the graphics cards. So everything is checking out. It's absolutely fine. And all this was done in a 25C ambient environment. And even on top of that, the noise ain't too bad as well. And I hope you enjoyed today's build. If you did, then be sure to hit that like button. Do let us know in the comment section below what you think of this PC right here. But also, we're gonna move on to the question of the day. It comes from Herring Solomon, and he asked, will the 3400G fit this motherboard? And he's referring to the A300 series Des Mini from ASRock. And yes, the 3400G will work, except it may need a BIOS update in some circumstances. And that is essentially when you go in and you update the BIOS chip itself so it can support the new CPUs, or the new APU in this case, the 3400G, because if you don't have that BIOS update, then it doesn't have the microcode to recognize that APU, and you'll just simply boot up the PC and it's like the PC won't work. So it definitely can work, but one thing to look out for if you're buying it from a retailer is just make sure that it's got Ryzen 3000 ready. That means it will support the chip from the get-go. Anyway guys, with that aside, I hope you enjoyed my amazing Fortnite Chapter 2 skills here today on display, and I'll catch you in another tech video very soon. Peace out for now. Bye.